Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about something I think almost every English learner has experienced, mistakes that make us study for a long time but still feel like we're not improving. And the interesting thing is, sometimes we're not lazy at all, that we spend a lot of time learning English, but somehow we still feel tired, frustrated, and unmotivated. So today, we're going to talk honestly about those things. And today we have a very interesting guest. Hi.
Hi Owen, hi everyone. Honestly, I think I used to make almost every mistake we're going to talk about today.
I think many people listening right now are probably thinking, wait, I think I'm doing the same thing.
Exactly. Because many of these mistakes are so common that almost every English learner experiences them at some point. We just don't realize it at the time.
So in your opinion, what's the most common mistake?
I think too many people learn English the same way they learn subjects at school. They spend a lot of time studying grammar, copying notes, memorizing structures, doing exercises, learning vocabulary from lists, but they almost never actually use English in real life.
That's so true that I remember memorizing a lot of long sentence patterns just for exams that I could do the test pretty well, but if someone suddenly asked me something in English, my mind would go completely blank.
I used to be exactly the same. For a long time, I thought if I learned enough grammar, I would naturally become good at speaking English. But later I realized I could do grammar exercises very well, while my real communication skills were almost zero.
I think many people will relate to that. Studying a lot but freezing when it's time to speak.
Exactly. Because English is a language, not just a school subject, that if we only study to pass exams, it becomes very difficult to react naturally in real conversations. Many people study English for years but never talk to themselves in English, listen to podcasts, or use English in daily life. So their brains never really get used to using English naturally.
Another very common mistake I notice is that many people try too hard to sound like native speakers.
Exactly. And honestly, I used to do that too. I watched TikTok videos and foreign creators, then tried to copy their accent, stress, and pronunciation.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Sometimes people speak normally, but we try to make everything sound extra cool.
Exactly. And sometimes we stop focusing on what we're actually saying because we're too busy thinking, do I sound native enough? Do I sound cool? Will people think my English is good?
I had a phase where I felt like I was performing English instead of actually speaking English.
That's exactly it. Some people stress words too much, or drag sounds too long, or force themselves to use slang all the time, and honestly it can sound very unnatural. The most important thing in communication is being understood, not sounding 100% native.
I think social media influences a lot of people in that way.
Definitely. People see someone speaking English confidently online and immediately think, if I want to be good, I have to sound exactly like that. But honestly, speaking clearly, naturally, and confidently is much more important.
I think this is one of the biggest problems for many learners, being afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah. Some people already know what they want to say in their heads, but because they're afraid of bad pronunciation or grammar mistakes, they choose to stay silent.
I've experienced that so many times. Sometimes I only wanted to ask a simple question, but I overthought everything so much that I ended up saying nothing.
Exactly. And the saddest part is that many people think, I'll start speaking when my English becomes better. But honestly, if you never speak, it's very hard to improve.
That hurts because it's true.
I've met many people who can read English very well but are still terrified of speaking in real life. The moment someone looks at them, they immediately become nervous. Some people even rehearse one sentence in their heads many times before saying it out loud.
I completely understand that feeling, especially when there are people around us who seem much better at English. We become even more afraid of being judged.
Exactly. But honestly, most people don't care whether your pronunciation is perfect or not. They just want to understand what you're trying to say.
Are there any other mistakes you notice?
Definitely. Point one very common mistake is studying based on motivation only. Studying for 5 hours one day, then stopping for an entire week.
That feels way too familiar. Whenever I felt motivated, I used to open pronunciation videos, vocabulary lessons, grammar videos, and then a few days later, all my motivation disappeared again.
Exactly. And that makes many people think, maybe I'm just bad at languages. But honestly, the problem usually isn't talent. It's inconsistency.
I realized I improved the most when English became part of my daily life instead of something I forced myself to study.
Exactly. Every day, listening a little, is speaking a little, using English a little is often much more effective than cramming for hours. English is something you need to interact with regularly, not something you only study under pressure.
So after all of that, what do you think is the most important thing when learning English?
I think people should stop trying to become perfect too quickly. Many people quit because they think, their pronunciation isn't good enough, they don't sound natural enough, or they're still not fluent enough. But honestly, being able to communicate at all is already something great.
I really like that idea.
And I think English is not about proving that you're smarter than other people, that it's a tool that helps us connect, learn, and create more opportunities in life. Back then, I used to think English was just pressure. But later I realized it's more like a door. When I started understanding English, I could explore more things, understand more perspectives, and feel much more confident.
I think many people study English for years and slowly forget why they started learning it in the first place.
Exactly. Sometimes we study with so much pressure that we forget language was originally created to connect people, not to make us feel afraid.
I think many people will see themselves in today's conversation.
I think so too. Because almost every English learner has experienced at least one of these mistakes. And honestly, that's completely normal.
What matters is recognizing those mistakes and slowly improving little by little.
Exactly. You don't need to be perfect from the beginning. You just need to keep going. Sometimes improving slowly is still much better than giving up completely.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, Lucas.
Thank you, Owen. I'm really happy to be here.
And thank you everyone for listening to today's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos and continue improving your English with us every day. See you in the next episode.